To introduce our speaker, may I call on Mr. Marco Nang, CPA, Managing Partner of M. Nang and T. Lopez Partnership Firm, who is also the facilitator of this topic's discussion. Please give them a virtual round of applause.
Friends, so let me introduce our good friend, no, our speaker. He is a chartered accountant with over 12 years of experience as a forensic auditor and investigator. He has worked on multiple cases across India, UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and Australia. Sarang specializes in investigative accounting, forensic data analytics, and has helped multiple organizations across sectors to identify cases of fraud and malpractice. Sarang is a member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand. Without further ado, let's call on to the virtual floor, Sarang Dalar. Over to you, Sarang.
Thank you, Mr. Mike, for that kind introduction, and pleasure to be here. And thank you for having me, for this particular session. And uh, this particular topic is a very interesting topic. It's something that's very dear to my heart, and I'm glad that so many people have decided to spend most of their Friday afternoon to look at this topic as well as the other topic on the agenda today. So thank you very much. I just have one request from all the participants to be as interactive and ask as many questions as possible. The way we normally, do these seminars, and I can always talk about the theory of fraud, but that's all dry stuff. As long as I'm showing you guys case studies and something that's, interesting and interactive, that's how, I like to conduct our workshops and seminars. So please be as interactive as possible. We'll also have many opportunities for people to, discuss a case study on the chat, and then we can take it forward from there. And later on during the day, we also have a panel discussion where we can take up even more questions and, insights that you guys may have. So with that, I'm going to kick off my session. So thank you, Mr. Mike, and I'm just going to share my screen and go ahead with that. Yeah. Um, Give me 1 second. Uh, just let me know when my screen is visible. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. I'm just going to this. Yeah. All right. So, so to start off, let's understand what is a forensic audit, right? What do we mean by forensic? Forensic essentially means something that's usable or admissible in a court of law. So that's why forensic auditors, whenever we submit either a report, a document, a finding, or a review, we have to ensure that it is backed up by sufficient evidence, which can eventually be used in a court of law, specifically when we're using the word forensic. Hence, whenever we perform our analysis, review, or including our audit, which we term as forensic in each case, we have to be, looking at evidence and documentation with an eagle eye. It's important for us to be able to look at things differently and yet be able to put those thoughts and processes that we observe into a document form so they can, eventually be shared with either a legal team or with a court of law and so on. Therefore, it begs the question that how does a forensic audit differ from a conventional audit, right? And it's a very interesting thought because whatever I've mentioned in terms of forensics, of course, outside of the admissibility in a court of law, is essentially what a traditional auditor would do. Look at the financial statements, look at supporting documents, and essentially give comfort to either shareholders or stakeholders that elements of their company or entity are in a place where they are financially stable or sound. Where forensic audit comes in is actually how the evidence is evaluated. So to take up this, this distinction, I normally do this in most of my seminars and webinars, and this is where I love the thoughts and comments from the audience as well. That let us take the case of a bank manager, right? There's a case of the death of a bank manager, and together we're going to try and solve this case. And at the same time, while solving this case, we will identify what are the differences between a conventional audit and a forensic audit, right? So let me give you a brief background about this particular case. So as you can see on the screen, that a specific bank manager was found, unfortunately dead, at his desk. And we have the following information, right? The doctor certified that the bank manager had consumed a certain rat poison. And that particular poison was also found in a coffee cup, which was on the deceased bank manager's death. Further, they also confirmed that the poison in the coffee cup was the same as the poison that was found in the bloodstream of the bank manager. Is everyone with me so far? Okay. If there are any questions, you can just put them on the chat and we can, of course, take them forward. But as of now, this is the situation that the bank manager is dead by consuming a certain poison which was found in the coffee cup, right? When we look at this case a little bit more in detail, we found that there was a suicide note that was that was there below the bank manager's hand. And our forensic, or rather, our lab forensics were able to confirm that the note was even taken out or printed from this specific printer that was located below the desk of the individual. I hope you can see that over there, but yeah. Uh, we further found that in this case, there was also fingerprints, exactly as the way shown on the screen, that five fingerprints of that individual were found on one side of a paper just below the hand on which the suicide note was written. And there were no other fingerprints that were found. It was only the fingerprints of the bank manager, right? And based on this, right, can we, I would love to hear from people in the chat, what is a basic opinion that we would form, or are there any questions that anyone would have? So I'd love to open it up to the audience just to understand that based on the facts that I've provided, that this person has consumed coffee, which coincidentally had the same poison that the person has, that has caused the person to die. There is a suicide note taken from a printer within the office, and only the bank manager's fingerprints are there. So, is there any thoughts of what could be the reason for death here? Please feel free to put the answers on the chat so we can we can have a look at them. Suicide, right? Yeah. Okay. Great. Premeditated suicide. Sure. Excellent. So I think that's excellent observation. So let's look at these observations one by one. Why would he do that in the office? Usually suicide is done in private. Fair enough. That's a very good point. Just to elaborate, in this scenario, assume that this was in his private office. But I like the way you're thinking, that you're looking at it from perspectives that are even beyond the case. So whoever said that, that's a very, very brilliant idea, right? Pre-existing condition, again, excellent. So good thought process in terms of looking at something, very, very good, Taimur. Thinking of it from a perspective that mostly suicide notes are handwritten. Now, whatever Maria, heart attack due to stress, possible. Of course, all of us live in very, very stressful environments. Very possible. I really appreciate all the answers, but I must admit, what Maria and Taimur have specifically said are very, very important aspects as to look at this particular case from a different lens, and that's what forensic auditors do. But conventionally speaking, based uh, uh, on the evidence, we have a death certificate, the cause of death is found, the lab report confirmed the economy, and the fingerprints. So, in every sense, based on the documentary evidence, most of us, which we've seen from the chat, will arrive at an opinion that the death was indeed a suicide. But here's where the distinction comes between a forensic auditor and a conventional auditor. In a conventional audit, the auditor always relies on documentary evidence, right? In a forensic audit, the forensic auditor, in fact, questions even the documentary evidence, including the reliability of the documentary evidence. So, this is a very, very important point to understand that forensic auditors will not just take a mere piece of paper or a document, or they will question that the validity, the authenticity of that specific document as well, or any evidence for that matter. So that's the key distinction. And now let's have a new or a refreshed look at this case, right? I want everyone to take an example, right? In this case, of course, I did not mention anything about fingerprints during this entire process. Now, I did mention that fingerprints were only found on the paper. I never mentioned that fingerprints were found on the coffee cup. Majority of us assumed that, oh, the coffee cup would have had the fingerprints of the bank manager. But this is a lesson in audit as well. The Sometimes we overlook some of the more rudimentary details because we assume that they would have already been taken care of. But nonetheless, at this point in time, even the bank manager having the coffee may not necessarily, prove in a court of law that it is not a suicide, but it is definitely a very strong red flag. There is one more element in this entire case. It is specifically regarding the paper. Now, if you remember, how we had shown the paper was that the fingerprints were all found on a single side of the paper. So if I go back to how it was found, I specifically showed that in this piece of evidence that the fingerprints were all found on one side of the paper, right? That means that the fingerprints were formed in some part like this. Now I want all of you to test this out at some point in time. That try to pick up a piece of paper from a printer anywhere without having at least one fingerprint on the other side. So it is virtually impossible from a printer to pick up a piece of paper in this manner. You would always have to pick it up in this manner where you would have at least one fingerprint on the other side. And hence, in this particular case as well, because the way the fingerprints were found on the suicide note and there were no prints anywhere else, it led us to believe that there is definitely something more in this specific case. And that's where we like to draw the distinction between a conventional audit and a forensic audit. So in a forensic audit, we do not just accept any piece of evidence at face value. It is our duty and responsibility to ensure that we test it to a level where we're so convinced that there is no other answer. I hope that was an interesting example to show you the distinction between what is a conventional audit and what is a forensic audit. I'm happy to have your thoughts and comments in that for the next minute or so in case if anyone does. Right. Great. So keeping this in mind, I'd love to ensure that whatever case studies we discuss from a financial or non-financial perspective, keep in mind that we need to exercise our brains as far as possible because these examples are going to be something that are very unique in their own nature, right? So let's move forward and take it ahead. So correct. The answer in this question was in this case was the person was poisoned. So this was just a key example just to get everyone in the mood in terms of using kind of our intellect to solve some problems. But we'll be discussing a whole host of case studies today, and we'll be doing it in this form as well, like where I show you some documentation or some sort of evidence, and we can discuss it, debate it, and then come to a conclusion. But it's very important to understand that whatever we are showing today is not an actual fraud that has taken place anywhere else. It's just inspired by it. The pieces of evidence that we show are completely meant for training purposes only. We normally like to give this disclaimer because we don't like to insinuate or intend that there was a fraud or any sort of malpractice done anywhere in the world, right? So with that, let's see what we'll cover today. So we'll take a look at some examples. Like what we saw in terms of the bank manager's case was a more from a, let's say, criminal or police perspective, right? When there is a death, etc. We will see how this applies to even financial related documentation, and not just where there's a pure financial impact, but it can also be in terms of other documentation where you have no knowledge about finance or any other sort of accounting activity. Because one thing that I must mention is that even though it's called forensic auditing and accounting, I believe that it is anyone and everyone can be a forensic accountant or an auditor, right? Yes, the basics of it will come with time, but as long as you have a keen mind and a curious mind, I think everything is possible. So we go through a few cases in terms of documentation to see how we can read between the lines and try to find out what are the issues with them and how we can potentially prove a fraud or some sort of issue in those cases. We'll study a specific case in terms of how we can use data analytics today, right? Analytics is big. Like if we think about how the world is evolving, and I'm sure in the future it'll be more so as well, that today the quantum and size and availability of data is huge, right? As compared to maybe 15 years ago, and probably 15 years in the future will be even more. It's always great to have a lot of data, but how do we use that data, or how do we, you know, leverage the information that we have to get the best results in any sort of audit or forensic review, right? So we look at a few examples of data analytics, right? I also want to bring you guys up to speed with a concept called steganography. If we'll get more into it through the course of the webinar, but steganography is essentially masking some data within another data. So it essentially is a way of what we call in our parlance, either distracting someone from the actual issue by, providing some different sort of facade to it, right? Um, I'll also talk about using data or evaluating data in a kaleidoscopic approach. And we call it a kaleidoscopic approach because, like a kaleidoscope, we like to churn and chop and review data from different angles to see how best we can, get the most out of data, right? Uh, we've all heard about red flags, and red flags are basically any issues or concerns. But we'll also see a very important aspect about green flags. Now, again, we'll get more into it when we come to that particular section, but in a nutshell, red flags are where we feel there is a point of concern and where we're interested because there is a risk associated with it, while green flags are those cases where things are too good to be true, right? So it's in any scenario, it's never good to have negative observations, but it's not also good to only have positive observations. There's something sometimes at play which may come about. So that's what we call as green flags. Then we look at some, trying to evaluate non-financial data as well to see how best that can impact a, forensic accounting engagement or an audit engagement. And then there's one very interesting case study on a toll road process. So we'll have a look at that. Of course, these are a lot of case studies. We will try our best to fit as many as we can into the allotted time that we have, right? And lastly, in terms of giving you guys some sort of input, for doing your own forensic audit or engagements in the future, I'll share a few guidelines with you guys, which will help you to either structure your investigation process or remove your investigation report, and at the same time, based on my experience, give you a few do's and don'ts, which might just help you through the day. Albeit these are not sacrosanct, they may change and be very case to case, but it's good to have them on board, right? So with that, let's get started. I know I mentioned that you don't have to be accountants or auditors specifically to be a forensic investigator. But this example, I just like to start off with again to get people's, as we say, brain juices flowing, right? So I just wanted to have this thing open to anyone, and even if you're not from an accounting background, please feel free to try and rack your brains around this one, because we'll have a lot more examples where accounting knowledge is not required. But in this specific case, I think I'll give you guys maybe a couple of minutes, that this is a standard ledger from a specific vendor or a party or a customer, sorry, rather customer in this case, right? And these would come across in your normal audits and stuff as well. So you normally would get maybe a minute or so to just review this ledger and point out concerns. So I'll give you guys a minute or so to just, put on the chat some thoughts and comments that come to your mind to say that, is there some issue with this? Yeah. So let's give you guys a minute and then we come back to this. Please feel free to post any thoughts or comments on the chat. The idea is, in this particular case, if you are given charge of any, investigation and you come across this, is there something here that would, possibly raise concern for you? Right? So probably another 30 seconds more, and then I'll discuss some of the observations that we have. Right? Okay, someone is answering. August 13 and August 10. Excellent observation. Excellent observation. Is that excellent from Mia? Old accounts written off. Good observation in terms of the amounts keep on repeating as well. Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, that's some really very incredible and wonderful observations that we have. I'll just address the first one, that August 13th before August 8th. That's an exceptional observation that normally in a ledger, of course, it is possible, but nonetheless, it is something that will raise a concern that why is there a date mismatch? So Michaela, great job on that. Again, seeing that the values 35,000 repeat consistently, excellent observation. But in a case like this, one may argue that maybe these are the kind of goods and services they deal with. But nonetheless, the idea and the thought process is great, that you're questioning even the values that are coming about. Now, Mia, this is a very interesting example that you've given. Old accounts written off and recovered. If possible, could you come off mute and just explain your thought process of why you have a concern with this old accounts written off and recovered? Okay, debit and credit number. Okay.
It's a running balance.
Yes, please. If that's possible, just to give, I just wanted to understand what her thought process was so we can discuss. I mean, just take that note from her. Yeah, Mia, are you are you able to discuss your thought process behind it? Okay, no worries. But appreciate it. But let me. I think that's a sales on April 10th and written off
I
on
think
September are the
our
same.
IT our IT can unmute Mia.
Good point. Good point. Uh, right. Till they unmute Mia, there's another very interesting observation that I have. We have that on October 11th, of course, a lot of you have said that the balance is wrong, but there's one observation that's really interesting. Where did it go? Sorry, I think I missed. Yeah. My question is the 11th October entry, should it even be in a sales in a specific ledger for a party? Right? Okay, let me just and I think this is fantastic. I really appreciate all the observations that people have got up. But let me just give you guys a little bit of a brief. The observations around the date are absolutely spot on. That this should not happen. Dates should be sequentially mentioned. So therefore, this is definitely a red flag. You all have mentioned in terms of even the balances should be checked, and you must ensure that the balances are always all correct. Now, specifically to two examples that have come about. One is for old bad debt of ABC written off in 98, 99. Effectively, this balance has been written off 25 years ago, right? Very rarely, in no, and virtually in no case ever, do you get money out of a balance that has come back. And once it's been written off, it's completely gone. So when you write an old balance, old bad debt written off in 90 and now recovered, it actually comes as a separate entry, not in the party ledger, because the party ledger has already been squared off to that extent. This will come as a separate line item. So that's one. The second point regarding the 11th November entry is that, sorry, 11th October entry is the fact that scrap sold to ABC in cash memo has been credited to the party. Now, normally when we receive cash for scrap sale, the entry will never feature the party ledger. It will only be cash to sales. The party ledger never gets credited. So hence these two are very, very critical entries. But I also want to have a special mention to whoever pointed out that 10th August is actually a Saturday. This again is a brilliant observation because now we're learning to question every single element of this. So good job, everyone. I think that was fantastic that we're getting so many. Exactly. So I think great observation, guys, and a round of applause to everyone for participating and understanding all these various details. So very well done, and special shout out to I think Mia and a few other people for giving some fantastic recommendations. All right. So I promise this is the last last pure accounting one that we see, and now we'll move on to something more interesting, and hopefully we'll get even more participation than we have this time around. Okay, so now let me put you guys in my shoes, right? As we said in the beginning, that I'm going to discuss case studies with you regarding documents that we see in our everyday investigation. Now, here's an interesting case for you. Let me put it in the form of a pure case study, right? Let's say I am your client, and you are a forensic auditor or an investigator, and I have come and said that, look, I have a cousin or a friend who has given me this particular will and said that now they are going to be part of my father's estate. They've given me this will, which my father made probably in the uh, early 1950s or maybe 1958. And they've said that now they have a certain vested interest in my property. So I particularly feel that this particular will does not make sense, and we need to challenge it in a court of law. So you, as a forensic auditor, can you help me show that this is either a fictitious document, a problematic document, or something that will help me win the case? So are you guys with me? And can I give you guys maybe a couple of minutes? Maybe let's take 2 to 3 minutes to solve this. And what I recommend is let's put in our let's evaluate it. And after a minute or so, we'll start having a look at the answers on the chat. So I'll leave it up to you. The brief is that your client has come to you and said that uh, um, a person who's interested in their father's estate has come about with this will and is now challenging the estate. And it is up to you as forensic auditors to help your clients to identify issues or red flags or concerns in this will, which they may take to a court of law. And mind you, these are the things that we normally come about. So I'd love to hear a few thoughts that you guys have, and then I will show you what we look at from a forensic perspective and how we can analyze this document. So let's go for it. It's around, I think, 140. So we can maybe have 2 minutes or so. Let's go ahead. not notarized. Absence. Agreed. Okay, great. Excellent points. I think Joe said not notarized. Vincent said again not notarized. Fair enough. Good points. Fake. Teresa said fake signature. Okay. Hasib said signature color. Okay. Question on the signature. Shri is missing below signature. Good observation, but let's just say that in an Indian terminology, Shri means something like a Mr. or a Sir. But fair point. I like the way you're thinking that these things are not making sense. Uh, Jean has also said signature. I'm not sure that the descendant was able to determine. Sorry. I think able to determine his age of death when he was still alive and wrote the will. Excellent point. Excellent point. Um, complete name, not notarized. His age is definitely impossible to predict. Excellent. No witness signature seems new. Excellent point, Melody. And yeah, that's attendance link. Must be written and signed. No SPA. Date, age mismatch. Correct. No executor name. E-sig. Uh, dubious about the. How about the wife? Fair point. I know my wife would be no signatory from a good point. It's obvious that all of his will go to unusual may require forensic ink analysis. Very good point. No location. I think fantastic. All these points are amazing. Thank you guys so much for putting these wonderful points in. Signature looks new, and signature is digital. Uh, great points. Um, nothing about wife. The type icon appears to have reading over just make it. This could indicate an attempt to obscure, modify, or great observation by Angelo. I mean, I love the extent in terms of how we are looking at this. But one thing that I just wanted to bring to your attention and when we look at this will, right? And mind you, all your points about the context of the text here is fantastic. That aged about 70 years upon my death, is extremely valid to show how weak the will is. Because in terms of what is written about predicting someone's death is virtually it's impossible. But having said that, remember a will is a document or a reflection of some individual's thoughts on a piece of paper. So it is sometimes difficult to challenge a thing that is ambiguous. Yes, it can 100% be a great defense to argue the will, but it becomes difficult to prove in a way that this document itself is fraudulent, right? So what I in this case, one of the most important aspects, a lot of you pointed out that there was some issue with the signature, and it is apparent that this looks to be something unique. Now when we look at this signature very carefully, it has actually been done by a felt pen marker, or what we call as a Sharpie. um, Now this particular Sharpie was used to sign a will. Yes, that is, of course, something that is, you know, questionable. But does it say anywhere that you cannot sign a will with a Sharpie? No. But the fact is, it was signed by a Sharpie. If we go to the date of the will, the date was 20th February 1958. This is a long time ago. The idea here is that in 1958, a Sharpie was not even invented. This particular uh, felt tip pen was invented and available for commercial distribution only in 1962. So therefore, it was physically impossible for someone to sign with a felt tip marker at that point in time in 1958. So this is point one. So for all of you guys who thought about, looking at the signature and finding something wrong, exceptionally point. The second thing is, if you notice that the will actually is justified on both sides. That means today when we create a Word document, we are able to justify the text on both sides. Typewriters in 1958 did not have double justification. So therefore, this itself is a very critical point that in 1958, how is text justified on both sides? In fact, justified typewriters came out much later. The third element in this is change in size of font. Again, typewriters back in 1958 did not have the ability to vary font sizes. So when we look at the will text and this, there are variation in font sizes. And this was very difficult to do back in the day in terms of having these documents. So these are certain, elements that we as forensic auditors would point out to either our lawyers or our clients and say, forget the content of the will. It are these elements of the will itself that can raise question in terms of the authenticity of when this particular document was created. And that is, and I must admit, all your observations were fantastic because you are beginning to think like an investigator, where it's not just about understanding, okay, this is a will, we need to kind of figure out what are the issues with it, but about going into the subtle subtext of it. So I hope this was an interesting example, and I'll just quickly have a look at the chats to see what's digital worst of right, right. Exactly. I think great point by Mildred. Very valid. And I again really appreciate the enthusiasm and the participation. But this is what is all about forensic audit, right? Where we look at different documents, different things, and try to look at it. Okay, why not go into a level of detail that's beyond what is available to us? In fact, there have been many cases in the recent past where people have faltered because they have tried to produce documents of let's say yesteryears, maybe 20 years ago, with type fonts in Word that don't didn't even exist that time. And these are the kind of things that we need to look as good forensic auditors and investigators to see if we can, help our clients. But of course, this is one element of document review. So again, coming back to that example of how we look at things from the bank manager's suicide perspective, that we have to see and evaluate and test the evidence to a level where maybe we rack our brains and hit our heads against the wall, but we must do it in order to give them example. I hope this was also a good example, and we can move forward from there. Let me just quickly have a look at the chats and see it. Okay, great. So moving forward, let's get to now data analytics, right? What is data analytics, and how is it, you know, uh, kind of helpful in this world of fraud investigation and forensic accounting, right? So today, data is available in abundance, right? Take a look at any of your clients or your businesses. You'll see that virtually every aspect is being digitally or manually recorded somewhere or the other. And now we all have a repository of that data, which is available in a format where we can analyze it. So from an Excel sheet, so it could be something as simple as people coming in to your office in terms of logging in through an access card, fingerprints, emails that people send. It can be digital signatures on documents because now dates and all are appearing there. So all of that data is available. But the problem with availability of a lot of data, what do we analyze? How do we analyze? And where do we go, right? So forensic data analysis is essentially a couple of methodologies or tools where we can, use them for comparing different data sources, meaning that let's say if we are using three, four different data. So let's say there's a person who says that I have spent $100 in cash. You can check the cash spending register along with the invoices. So that becomes two different data sources to compare and check whether data is synchronous. It helps in identifying patterns, trends, over a period of time, in a specific time frame. It helps you analyze these various things. And lastly, it helps in anomaly detection, meaning that you can find out something that is completely outlying from the standard normal. Uh, the advantages of data analytics are very unique because analytics can all happen in the background. And as you guys would be, have guessed that anytime a forensic audit or an investigation is on, it's very difficult to, understand or do an audit on on site or on ground, right? Because you don't want people to kind of think that uh, your organization, your company, or your employees are under question. So therefore, data analytics is great because you can take the data, push it all offsite and have someone review it to at least give you a better sense of what's happening. Just to give you an example, like let's say in my own organization, I don't have proof, but I have suspicion that something is going wrong. Rather than bringing in a forensic auditor on day one and say that, look, you can investigate and speak to all my people and understand, and I want to know whether something is wrong or not. If suppose there is no issue, it actually, creates a very negative morale for everyone else, right? Therefore, in this case, what organizations and what I would do is that, you know what, I'm not sure whether someone has done something wrong. Let me give this data to an expert outside of our office, let them evaluate it, let them covertly look at it, and then come back. And then, yes, it may give me more, information. It can give me more of an insight as to what has gone wrong. So therefore, an advantage is that it is remote and covert. It supplements, our physical processes. It supplements all our documentary checks. So I think data analytics really, really helps in that. And of course, a lot of red flags do come about from data analytics. But as helpful as data analytics and technology is to the forensic accountant, always remember that's how helpful it is to the potential thief or the suspect or culprit, right? And of course, when we look at our data, we have to ensure that there's accuracy, there's consistency, there's completeness, and that data in itself is in a form where it is integral for us to, be able to evaluate it. Meaning, if we have an incorrect data set or not consistent data set, it can take up a lot of time and it can provide wrong results as well. So, to give you a brief example and how data analytics and steganography merge into each other, let me give you an example of what steganography is. Right, we discussed this very briefly that steganography is more about the art of distraction. Right, steganography is essentially a very old tool of hiding a message or a text or something in something else. So a classic example of steganography is something like a message in a bottle, right? Where you actually may think it's just a bottle, but inside there is a message. That's the whole concept about steganography. And that concept has now become more prevalent in terms of digital use, right? So we often see that sometimes we get an image of let's say either a footballer or a sporting personality or a celebrity or even a religious picture for that matter. And these are just random emails that may come, and actually these are not random. What people do is they put an entire message into these steganographic converters. Those converters convert or encrypt these message is into like either a random image file or a random PDF, and then this message is transported to someone else. Now think about it in this way: that I am working in a very big bank or investment bank rather, and I have very confidential deal information. Now all my emails are supposedly monitored. But what if I find a steganographic tool and put my message that, okay, target entity X, and I put it into a steganograph tool and I get a image of me and my friend playing pickleball, and I send this to someone else. This will effectively evade all the layers of security within the IT setup at an office. And eventually, when they reach my friend who's possibly going to use this information for some negative purposes, he will be able to identify and see, okay, these you'll be able to put this into a converter and get that message out from there. So that is what steganography is all about. And to illustrate this, I have a simple example, which again, I will need your help with. And I'm going to put this up on the screen. Yeah. I know that we are coming close to the mid-session break, right? Um, so what let's do, let's have a look at this particular example, and I will let you guys think over it on the break, and then we can come back and evaluate. How does that sound? Right? Okay. So I will just have to stop sharing my screen for a second because I'll have to share a different file. Just check. Okay.
So while you're pulling out the file, Sir Dara, so let's acknowledge the presence of Mr. Marco Nam.
Oh.
So
Hello, everyone.
Marco Nam here.
Just give me 1 second. Uh, yeah. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah. Okay. So I hope you can see this Excel file that's come online, right? Okay, great. Right. So here's an interesting thing, right? Let's say I am a fraudulent man and I have been um, told to tabulate the results of a World Music Award ceremony, right? And so I have, let's say, four judges who all independently provide me their scores, and I am the crooked man who's supposed to, you know, tabulate all the judges' scores and give you a final winner, right? Now, based on what I've shown on the screen, uh, and after tabulating all the judges' scores, according to me, Mr. Bieber is the winner for $10 million. Now, I want you guys to tell me, and please feel free to ask me questions as to my, whether I am right or wrong in showing this result. So I'm just going to keep the chat open so that I can just see any responses or this. Wrong average for Bieber. Okay, Bieber's average is wrong. Should be there. A lot of you guys at Bieber have scores not possible. The average, it should be 7.5. All right. Okay, I completely agree with your answers, but I have a question. I'm using Excel, correct? Excel has, I'm sorry, RS is just rupees, but you can just ignore that. It's a good point, but ignore that for now. Um, I'm going to ask you guys something. I'm using Excel. Now, Excel is a very, very good tool because it automatically calculates everything. So is this formula correct? If it is, can you guys just put like a thumbs up either on the chat or somewhere? Yeah, is this formula correct? Right? Because I have not, I'm just a simple guy who's an accountant. So I've just put this formula. Now, let's say in this case, is this formula correct? Yeah. Okay. Now, all of y'all in the chat have been telling me that I have done something wrong and that Mr. Bieber's formula is incorrect. But is this formula correct? I would say this is a correct formula, right? So if the formula is correct, whatever the values are, I'm not going to sit and argue with Bill Gates and Microsoft that this is not correct. So again, I'm going to re-ask my question. I have put in all the scores of the judges here, as you can see. I eventually have got my result. So is it, I mean, it's right, correct? Justin Bieber is the winner. Any more further thoughts or questions? Because according to me, I have all the numbers here. You can have a look. Every number is there. Every detail is correct. The formula is all correct, right? It seems absolutely fine. All of you have told me that average should be wrong. Everyone is 7.5. I was like, no, according to Excel mathematics, it's correct. There are no hidden rows. If you can see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are no hidden columns. There's no detail. So any thoughts? Wrong label. Wrong label. Okay. Since average is not correct. Okay, great. Maybe incorrect linking, correct. Okay, someone said this is correct. Fair enough. Yes, yes. There's a manual override since average is not correct. I will get back to this answer in a little while. The sum is correct. Yes, formula is correct, but there should be divided by 4. Okay, so good point by Nadine. But what happens is when Excel takes an average for a specific number of rows, it auto calculates the number of line items to divide by. So fair point, but yeah. Wrong label. Joy. Okay, I will come back to that answer as well. Correct formula, yes, except for Bieber. Average by 4, potential bias. Bieber receives the. Okay. Please check my computer again. Yeah, good point. I might have to check my computer again, but something tells me that even if I were to give this file to you, you'd get the same result. A formula pertains to wrong column for Bieber. Good point, but let me just have a recheck. It's D9. Yeah, it's D9. Glitch Bieber average result comes from column E of Metallica. Not really, but I see where you're coming from because Metallica's average is 9.8.25, still going above. We can access we can use manual computation. Fair enough. I can log from correct answer 6%. All right. Okay. I think these are exceptional answers. I know that we have a break, but is it possible just before the break? Is it possible for there were two people, I think Mia and Joe was it? I think there was someone else's. Maybe because of that specific number. Oh, Temu, that's a very, very good and valid point. But we will come back to that answer specifically. Force data. Yeah. So let me give you guys the answer to this, right? Sometimes, as we say, if we go back to the fingerprint case, the answers are really simplistic. It's just a matter of this. I fully agree with each of you that when we look at these four numbers, right? Because um, our basic instinct, our basic mathematical instinct says that cell 7.58 and 7.5, the average cannot physically be more than 9.3, right? So there's definitely something wrong. But let me twist this. Imagine if there were 10,000 line items, right? And you can't mentally calculate the average. One would have just evaluated the formula and been like, okay, since the formula is running is correct. So I just want to keep that in mind. Now, here the case is so simple. Like I know that all of you have given very complex and very interesting answers in terms of how this fraud would have done place. But here, remember, I am the controller of this sheet, right? I have shown you what I wanted to show you in terms of evidence. That means showing you that the formula is correct. But yet I am the one who's controlling the sheet. And what I have done is nothing more than distract you from the truth and actually done what we call as a basic steganography. Now, if you had the mouse, you would just simply do this, right? It is as simple as that. Now, the answer is correct at 7.5, it should not be. But I did actually, I mean, I know that a lot of you were still not convinced that I was right, but I'm sure I convinced some of you somewhere down the line that, hey, if the formula is correct, it must be. But fraudsters do this. Fraudsters do exactly this. They try to deceive you and move you in different directions and try to get you to believe that what they're saying is correct. Now this is a very simple example, and again I come back to the fact that this was just 4 rows. But if this was maybe, just think of it as 10,000 line items or 300,000 line items, it would be very, very difficult to do this unless you actually go to that cell and remove it. So there are of course techniques that we do to kind of help this out. But in reality, when a guy really wants to, or when a person wants to, defraud you, they will use these sort of techniques to pull wool over your eyes. And as good auditors, good investigators, it is incumbent on us to ensure that we test and ring the system. Because sometimes the answer is just that simple. It's not magic. It's not this. And there are advanced technologies also that go into like the format of the cell and you can change it. And of course, I have another example that shows that, which is and brilliant of Taimur to find that out. But in this case, uh, the answer is just so simplistic. And just a lesson in terms of investigation over my 13, 14-year career in doing this day in, day out. It's not always that uh, the technique used by the criminal is the most intelligent. It is the criminal who's intelligent and may use a very basic technique. There's a very big difference in the two. It is not about finding a very complex way of doing things. It's about using simplicity to disguise a complex system. And I feel this is a great example to show that how vulnerable the world is, even with the advent of technology, and how even today, maybe not all of you, but at least a certain percentage, I was able to question basic mathematics just by showing you an Excel sheet. I know that many of you would still have had reservations, but at the same time, you all would still, I would still have a valid argument against you all in terms of the example, right? So hope this was interesting, and with everyone's permission, would you guys like to take a break, or would you like to continue? I completely leave it up to everyone to decide. Yeah, I mean, fantastic. I think a couple of guys did a great. I think I just saw the few messages on the chat about pasting an object over. Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, true, true. Maybe me, I'm not as good as a fraudster as the normal people were, but this is just to give you guys a way to show this. And let's say in a situation like this, how would one even find out without going through to all the various numbers? Well, that's a very simple way. You just say that go to reference special, and if you select objects, it selects all the objects on the sheet automatically, and then you can just delete it, and it just shows you where you are. Yeah. Uh, so okay, you guys are happy to continue more. Let's do that then. Let's go. Let's go more into detail, and I will just show you maybe another example in terms of how we have how steganographic tools can be used. Yeah. So let me just stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'll open my new file. Okay. I will just share my screen. Uh, yeah. Okay. Now, this is a similar example, and this actually takes back from to what Taimur was, Taimur's observation, which is also a very, very brilliant observation that using the properties of a cell. Now take this particular case, right? This is essentially a bid evaluation, and this would happen in a lot of large government organizations, large organizations as well, where you compare, different bids coming from different people, and normally these bids are, spread across multiple line items, different sort of, metrics and everything. And finally, you have, sorry, let me just make this a little smaller so it's just easier to see for everyone. How do I move this to this side? Yeah. Uh, okay. Okay, I'm just making this a bit smaller so it's easy for everyone to see. Like normally you have this sort of a thing that you have a bid evaluation sheet that's covered up and then you eventually find L1, L2. Now in this case as well, there are multiple line items and we can see. And if we just use our basic common sense, let's take the first example. If we just see that the total here is $472,000, right? Or rupees or whatever. While here, the amounts actually change. And if you notice, there's a slight variation in the comma as well. We know that this particular amount, if you are physically to take the total, comes to $472,000, and the others are significantly above or below that. Yet what happens is the bid goes to L1 as this person purely because his value eventually comes to be the lowest. And this is exactly what Taimur was saying, that someone has manipulated in terms of a custom format which they have put in this cell to essentially show that no matter what the value will appear to be at this 372,000. So these are techniques that fraudsters use, and one must be very careful with evaluating documents. That's why in not just physical documents, but even digital documents. So in our line of work and stuff, even when we get, let's say, either a spreadsheet or direct an extract from S4HANA or Oracle or whatever, we ensure that we get it either directly from the source or we run our operations on it to make sure that it's correct. And this is again a very critical element because all your analysis going forward will be based on sheets like this. And these are again how fraudsters use these to kind of manipulate us or put wool over our eyes in order to get things done. I hope this part has been interesting as well. So I'll switch back to my presentation so it can kind of give you more guys more data on it. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Um, I know that we will definitely take up more questions during the um, panel discussion, but if there are if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them just before we move on to our next section. All right. So let's go to a different kind of example of looking at things from a kaleidoscopic approach, right? That's basically looking at things from a perspective that we move our lens in a different way to evaluate, and sometimes data allows us to do that. Uh, okay, I'm going to show you all a small video. I'm not sure whether I'm sharing my sound. Okay. If the sound is not coming, no problem. I'm just going to show you a basic example, and I want to understand uh, what yeah, the objective of the next exercise is to understand what is happening in front of the truck. Yeah. So I just want to know, and I will give you maybe 30-35 seconds. I think that's it. To let me know what is happening in front of the truck. The question is extremely simple, but I know by now, in terms of this seminar, you all will understand that there is no such thing as a simple question. But can you tell me what's happening in front of the seminar, in front of the truck? It's ironic that you have a couple over there doing music is a great thing. I don't know whether you guys can hear the music or not, but at least I get this music that's coming from here. It's interesting, right? These new kind of Bollywood tracks and stuff that are going about. Yeah, I mean, but can you guys hear the music? A thumbs up, isn't it? Some Beningo said that it's old people dancing. Yeah, true. I can see that. I used to dance a lot in school as well. Oh, wait, okay. Let me put on some. Let me put on some music for you guys here, so if you guys will be able to hear. Any specific request? Okay. Okay, I think really hats off to Resti and Frima because these are great observations. Uh, Fantastic observations by the two of you guys. That actually what we are seeing is not the front of the truck. The the actual part of the truck is the back part of the truck. And here again is a very good example of a particular fraudster trying to point you in a different direction, or us as human beings getting distracted by what we know. Now these are two very individualistic components. Like sometimes knowledge itself is of course a lot of power, but it may also handicap because we develop a lot of biases in our mind. So in this specific case, when I was talking about this, I tried to talk about dance, music, this and that, to get your mind to think that, okay, is it something to do with the couple or is it something to do with the truck? But no one actually noticed on the small details, right? Like where the wheel arch does not align in. There is a bar, I mean, a pillar, a deep pillar that actually comes across the truck. So these are the small things that are very important in understanding that, okay, a fraudster or anyone else will either use distraction, and sometimes it can be our own intelligence. So I think Freemark and Miyachi, great points to pick this up. Very good, right? Now similarly, let's take this to the accounting world, right? This is assume that in this case you are also a fraud investigator that has been assigned to have a look at some details, right? And this is essentially a vendor master. A vendor master is nothing more than just all of your vendors or suppliers, their names, details, tax identification numbers, details of who your vendor code, the person from your team who created these codes and the dates, right? Now, let us say we have this. What information comes out of this? So what can we start identifying that can, potentially give us some red flags? I'm happy to again have little comments come in the chat. Oh, sorry. Hey guys, can you like hello? Yeah. Right. So this is a vendor master, and we're now looking at an aspect in terms of group 7 is repeat. So I'm just going through the chat. I think Maria has mentioned that group 7. Uh, are you referring to group 7 as in this particular thing, the row item 7? Um, so this is essentially to answer the question in terms of how this is arranged. This is just let's just call it random. Same vendor, okay. One second. Maria has mentioned group 7 is the same vendor. Possibly. Okay, let's put it this way that think about it that maybe these are 70 series is missing. Group 7. Oh, sorry, you meant the name Group 7 has repeated. Fair enough. Good point. Valid point. Group 7 placement services, Group placement services. They have two vendor codes. Excellent point. Anything else? I think that's a very valid observation. Excellent point. Same pan with different address. Row 16 and 22, same vendor. Okay, sure. Yeah. 16 and 22. Same group, but yeah, not a bad observation. Interesting. Exceptional point that the same pan numbers appear. Yep, agreed. Fair point, fair point. Very, very valid observations. Row 21, incomplete address. Pest CP, pest control have different vendor number. Again, excellent point. Excellent point. Okay, great. Uh, now let me show. I think whatever you guys have said is fantastic. Now, is there another layer of information available in this? Now let's go back to not just the dancing couple, but the kaleidoscopic approach, right? The basically changing our viewpoint. In the case of the truck, right? Our initial viewpoint was on that couple that was dancing. Like, so if I go back to this, we were focusing on what we thought was the front of the truck here. We changed our perception and started looking more at the truck, and then we found out that okay, there's actually the back of the truck. So what we need to know is this is where we need to be looking at. Similarly, here in a kaleidoscope, when we change our point of view, let's say for example, we're looking at this piece of paper like this, but the moment we change it to something like this, we see something different, and this happens a lot, specifically in dates. And here I want to go back to I forgot who it was, but they made a very, very interesting observation about the 10th of August 2024. They said that was a Saturday. And that stuck in my mind. So I'm really sorry, I forgot who mentioned, but whoever did, brilliant point. In this case as well, we can kaleidoscopically churn this data to show something more about the dates. We can find out the day of the week, and that's very simply done in any spreadsheet. You can either do it by a number 1 to 7, or you can do it by actually asking for Excel to do it in what we call as a DDD format, right? Now when we do it in this format, we come across something interesting. We find out that certain rows, certain items actually were made on a Sunday. And when we filter it down further, we actually come to a conclusion that there was a specific employee coming on Sundays to pass entries and get these. So these were essentially, and this is, of course, it's inspired by a real case where we were given the, charge to find out what happened in, why certain payments were being made to vendors when they had no idea. And then we realized that these vendors were actually incorporated or inserted by this particular individual, and he used to come in on a Sunday to create these fictitious vendor codes so that payments could be processed in. But in this case, what was very interesting to do was we were able to change our viewpoint of the date of just looking at it from a very simplistic, form, to provide us with another layer of information, another layer of data that would get us some more information which could be very useful in our investigation. So I hope this was interesting as well, right? Great. Any thoughts or comments that we can work on? Investigated and non-working. Very good, Bendigo. That's perfect, and that's exactly what we were looking for. That these things were created on a specific day. Now, if we move forward to, let's look at certain things in terms of green flags. Sorry, 1 second. I think there's some yellow lines that are appearing here. Let me just shut. Yeah. I'll just reshare my screen. I think there was some issue with that. Let me just reshare. Yeah. Okay, so that's much better. Those two yellow lines disappeared. So we've all heard about red flags, right? Red flags are essentially where we have some problems or some issues coming about. But what are green flags? Now, green flags are nothing more than when there are certain things that are too good to be true. And these things often cause a major problem you know, in any investigation, because yes, we're always called upon when things go wrong. There are 5 problems that happen, and therefore we need someone to come in, and that is definitely an issue. But sometimes we are also called in when things are too good to be true. When things are too good to be true, many business owners often believe that, look, we know our business is running well, but it cannot be running this well. There has to be something that's going on, because when things are running extreme or too good to be true, it's actually reaching a point where it can just fall off a cliff, right? And these things can really impact the way we run things. So this is what green flags are. And to illustrate that, I'm going to give you an example of a generous milkman, right? And this is a hypothetical case study that we have, and we wanted to discuss in terms of where there was a company that was manufacturing milk products, right? And this company was manufacturing milk products, let's say in India, and they had a world-class testing facility, right? So they pride themselves on providing the best quality products, and for them, these products had to be done in a way where the raw material, right? The milk, the quality of milk had to be of a specific pH and a standard. And if it was not of that standard, this would not, work. And therefore, they had set up a state-of-the-art testing facility that would ensure that this particular milk would be tested, and only if it passes the test would it go into production of milk and cheese, right? The company was doing very well. Sales were significantly up, and in fact, the profit margin was fantastic, right? And they realized that year on year we're making even more money than we did. But there was one director, a very smart, a very intelligent finance director who basically realized that it's not quantum of sales that are increasing, but some reason our costs are reducing. And it's not necessarily for some reason, but that our profit is increasing, but it's due to a cost reduction that our profit margins are increasing. So he just thought that, look, I have no idea about how things are being done. So let me just hire some external help and to find out whether, is there any other external influence on the system that can take, right? So in this case, what they did was they hired a forensic team like us, and we came about and we looked at this case, and we were told that, in case if why don't you guys conduct some market inquiries and find out about the quality of the milk supply, because we have a state-of-the-art testing facility. We are getting our milk at a significantly cheaper price, and we're getting it majority from one specific vendor. Can you guys find out if there is something to be concerned about by making market inquiries, right? So we made market inquiries, and before I get into this delivery process, and we found out that there were two things. There was a significant amount of rejection in terms of final end product, right? So let's say this company was making cheese. Now, what was happening is the supermarkets where this cheese was being sold, was getting rejected to a significant or to a percentage that would alarm management. But the advantage that management had is that because of the intermediaries, no one could pinpoint where the issue was, right? It could be a delivery issue, it could be anything. So that was out of their control. We also made inquiries in the market in terms of the price of goods, right? For example, raw milk. Let's say, for example, it was available at $2 a metric liter, or maybe $20 for 1,000 liters, right? The company was getting this material at only 15 or $13. We went to the market and we asked, the various other vendors as well, that what do you think is the correct price? And all of them gave a rough answer, of course, hypothetically, that it was around $20. Some gave 21, some gave 19. We asked them, what would you be able to supply this quality of milk at 13 or $14? And each of them said, no chance, not possible at all. This quality of milk, which is required by this company or this facility, cannot be sold at 30. Otherwise, you'd be making a absolute loss, right? So now to explain the delivery process in the environment of the company, right? So let's assume this is how the standard milk delivery process. Milk is the key or sole raw ingredient in this entire process. So what would happen is the gated community would have a truck come in, right? The milk truck would have a sample which would be tagged to the truck number, which would be sent to the lab. The lab would test it. If the test was positive, the truck would be allowed to go ahead, unload into the facility for onward production. If the sample was rejected, the truck would be sent out, right? Now, keeping this in mind, we found out that from the data available, that almost 30% of this particular vendor, which the company was going, which was getting where the company was getting the milk at a very low value, was 30% of his overall delivery. So virtually one in every 3 to 4 deliveries was being rejected, which again is crazy because when we think about our conversation with the market, they said firstly it's very difficult to supply at this price, and second, to hold rejections is even more difficult. I mean, it's just virtually impossible to sustain this sort of a business. So when we took this observation up to the company said, forensic auditors, thank you for pointing that out, but doesn't this mean that our system is working? We are rejecting 30% of the deliveries, which is fantastic, which means that we are not getting the bad product inside. So we thought about it, right? But something inherently inside us was not, convinced about this. And we spoke to the marketing teams, etc., and we tried to understand from them. And they also explained to us that the rejections that are coming out there could be multiple reasons for it, but it doesn't appear to be something to do with distribution. It is something to do with the production. So this just got us thinking a lot more. And believe it or not, this was one of the most interesting cases that we worked on. We were actually able to point out a fraud using data. But before that, I'd love to hear any theories that anyone would have in terms of how this could have happened. Happy to review on the chats and just discuss it. So the idea is very simple. I explained this entire process to you guys, right? That how the milk is rejected and the milk is accepted. But yet there was we were able to find out a fraud in it using data analytics. So please put your thoughts, and it'll be wonderful for me to kind of see what you guys have in mind in terms of these issues, in terms of your thought process. I would say take maybe a couple of minutes to go through this, but I think it'll be very interesting to see what you guys have. And especially when I show you the final answer of what happens, how it works out. But please feel free to give my thoughts and comments. Anyone with any theories or any ideas? Okay, let me explain to you guys how this fraud actually took place. Okay, wait, sorry. I have an answer here. So how do I minimize this? Connivance, sure, but it's important to understand points to scale and infrastructure could be. Good point. Good point. All right. Let me actually show you how this interesting fraud worked out. Again, relatively simple, but ingenious in its own way. So what this particular dubious vendor would do was he would send two trucks. Sorry. He would send two trucks to the facility. Let's call one truck on the left, which is the truck with the good quality milk, and the truck on the right with bad quality milk. Now, what would happen is samples from each of these trucks would go to the lab, right? And these samples would be tagged with the truck numbers. So 786 is this truck number, 412 is this truck number. That's how they would tag the samples. What he would do is, while the samples would take maybe an hour to get tested. And in that time, these trucks would go and sit in a parking lot within the facility. At that point in time, what this guy would do is he would switch the number plates of the truck. So when the number plates were switched, what would happen is the good milk truck would get rejected, the substandard milk truck would go and would basically get into production. Because as per the sample, they would think that this truck 786 is a truck with the good quality milk. Then what would happen is that the truck with the good milk would exit the facility and would come back in a short amount of time and again provide them a sample of milk, and this would get. So what this vendor would do is essentially would have subpar milk and decent quality milk, and actually would be getting a massive discount because he would essentially be mixing the quality of the two. And the reason of how we found this was very unique. We actually monitored or we evaluated the time it was taking for the rejected trucks to come back with the milk. In fact, we were monitoring the entry time and exit time of that specific vehicle, and we actually found that in some cases, the truck was literally just going out for maybe 15 minutes, just waiting and then coming back. And essentially, this particular factory was located very far away from where this vendor was. So it was almost like the truck was traveling at 220 kilometers an hour to reach this facility. So essentially, what they were doing was they were swapping the number plates. The good truck would go out, wait for 20 minutes, then come back, dump the milk, and go back. And in this way, they were basically manipulating the process. And how we were able to come across it was essentially evaluating data such as a non-financial data, such as not just the lab results, but basically comparing the lab results with, let's say, entry and exit time of the vehicles. So this is also, I would say, a very interesting case, and it's a very unique way of actually seeing how different kinds of frauds are taking place in the world. Different kinds of details are happening, and we are able to see ingenious or new or innovative methods of fraud. So happy to hear any thoughts or any comments in terms of this. So this is, I hope this is also interesting. Yeah, so I'm glad that this works well, and thank you guys for the. So moving forward, just to give you a flavor in terms of the theory of impossibility, right? Now again, going back to certain, pulling up the thread from where we are, that about different sorts of data, we have another case that we have another client or a customer who was looking at and essentially having a lot of sensitive data of people in the world, and they would hold them in their own premises. And this data was sensitive not because it was in terms of it had any critical information in it. It just, the volume of data in itself was being entrusted to this company on the basis of confidentiality. So they were very particular about their data, and because of that, of course, their IT systems were very strong, but they also were very particular about who was going into their office and who was coming out. So therefore, they had a very elaborate system of monitoring who would get in and out of that office, and they had proper biometric systems to record time of entry, date of entry, and all those aspects. So we were given that, and this company said that, look, we are not suspecting any fraud, but we want you to just give us a risk evaluation in terms of what can go wrong. This is our data set, and we want to run a health check on our company. So they used to have a pure turnstile system. Now, turnstile system is that only once you put the biometric access will the turnstile go. So it's basically not. It's also a physical movement as well as an electronic movement. So both of these machines are in sync, right? Um, every entry, every exit is recorded, right? And it's all backed by software and details and everything. And what would happen is these offices, right, apart from employees, there'll be a lot of contractors, like let's say cleaning staff and all, who would also need to go through the turnstiles because they have to be monitored in terms of data and efficiency. So the management requested us to conduct, an audit of the end, just to get, an idea to understand what was there. And then we got this. And just to give you an example of the kind of things that we figured out, we actually started mapping the date with holidays, right? Which were and when we say holidays, these are non-working days. So on these specific days, these people should not have been in the office at all. So we started picking up, cases like this. We also noticed that if you see in row number 19, there is one specific person with a deactivated ID. Now, a deactivated ID, a person should not be able to, even the turnstile should not allow any movement, but it was still allowing this sort of movement. And that's again a very, very big point of concern. We also then started evaluating the in and out time. So we tried to, picturize that if someone is coming into the office, they will be there for a certain amount of period of time, maybe 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever it may be, and then come out. So we started noticing that there were some people who were there for almost 23 to 24 hours in that office. And again, it did not make sense that how would someone be available in the office for so long? It was a mind-boggling fact. And on investigation, we realized that basically they were doing what was known as piggyback entry and exit, meaning they would basically exit without, having that, without actually tapping the card, but behind someone, along with someone, which is very, very risky. But the actual interesting portion started coming about when we started seeing very different kinds of data, such as this one, where basically, because I'm running a bit short, I'm just trying to compress what we're learning. We analyzed all of this data from a contractor ID perspective and started tagging when these contractors would be entering and exiting this particular facility. We actually found out that, let's take for example the first case of Abhiji AD. He has an entry time on the 1st of November at 8 p.m. and the corresponding exit time at 8:22 a.m. Now the 8:22 a.m. is of course on the following day, that is on the 2nd of November. But this particular person also has a corresponding entry at 5:43 in the morning, which is before his virtual exit at 8:22. Now, again, a very basic element that this particular company overlooked was the fact that actually this they thought that any entry would only be able to open the exit door if there is a corresponding entry, meaning they are paired, like an entry and exit would be paired. But they realized that there was actually a lacuna in the system, and the system was allowing double entry or double exit, which was a major, major point of risk for them. That means I could go in by tapping my physical RFID card, and I could provide that card to someone else to come into the office again, which was again a massive, massive concern. And this was majority happening with the contracted employees, because what they decided was a very cumbersome process to get the contracted employees to put in their biometrics at every point in time. And what they would do is the contracted employees would only get, let's say, RFID cards, and these RFID cards would be used to enter and exit the premises. So this was again a very interesting way of seeing that how non-financial data, now this data is only entry and exit data. It's not financial in any nature, but the impact can be so strong. That means if there is any issue or of leakage of data, which can provide maybe a huge legal risk for them, this can be something that can, really, really take an organization down to its knees. And therefore, as I said in the beginning, financial and forensics and audit is not merely restricted to pure financial data, like the ledger that we saw. It's about evaluating data from all perspectives and sides. So this sort of data is nothing to do with accounts and finance, but it is very critical. It's a very critical observation or forensic audit. And I hope this was also a very interesting or a different kind of perspective that you guys got. So please feel free to let me know your any thoughts or comments on this case study before we move to the next one. Yes, this is more of an IT issue. So this comes about in terms of what we call as weak or lack, uh, or basically lacking IT controls. So it is a combination of IT and human resources actually. Right? Okay, great. Sure, sure. Is it better now? Can you hear? Is my audio a bit better? Hello? Okay, great, great, sure. So the next case that I want to discuss is essentially a toll road, right? Now, this is a very interesting case study, and again, I'd love for you guys to be as active as and involved in this because this again the final result is quite unique. So let's say in this particular case, again, you are the forensic auditors. You've come about, and your client, a private equity firm, has invested a huge amount of money, like 25 million US dollars, in a toll road asset in India, right? It doesn't matter. You don't need to know the Indian context or whatever. We will provide you all the data that's available with the Indian context, right? Um, when they invested, let's say when the foreign company invested, uh, as always, the people who they invested into, the promoters of the company in India, they said that yes, within 5 years you'll get 10x of your money. It'll be huge. The toll would increase 200% because we see significant traffic volume. So in most of these toll roads, right, the money or the revenue that they make is more out of heavy vehicles or what we call as multi-axle vehicles. So these multi-axle vehicles actually give you, I think, account for maybe I think 60 to 65% of your overall revenue, and they also require a lot of maintenance on the road. So normally, when you see two industrial zones being built, any highway connecting these industrial zones is always a great project in terms of an infrastructure asset. So this road was connecting to two basically industrial districts, and this was the only road connecting, and was going to be a toll road. So whoever owns this particular asset, this toll asset, would get significant revenues, and this was what was pitched to this foreign investment, right? In 2015, when when of course on monitoring they realized that revenue increased by only 10% from 2011, but the government also runs like these traffic studies and reports. And in these traffic studies and reports, it was very clear that traffic had risen significantly in this region. So why is that? Why is it that the revenues have not showed up that much? So therefore, they suspected something was wrong, and they called us as forensic investigators to come and investigate this case, right? So we were given 6 months worth of toll data. We found out, a lot of this. And I must, inform you that, as I said, majority of the money the toll road earns comes from multi-axle vehicles, right? Now, multi-axle vehicles are large lorries or big trucks, and what would happen is that in many of these cases, the when you're at the toll road, the person has to insert manually whether it is a big vehicle or a small vehicle, or what they call as a LMV, HMV, or MAV, multi-axle vehicle, light motor vehicle, or heavy motor vehicle. And accordingly, there is a different rate for toll for each of these. So what one of the things that we came up with various errors in classifications, right? And we were able to add back almost 50% of the revenue. And the client, the client's target entity was like, we are willing to settle this for 40 million, and it was quite happy. In fact, the private equity was also quite happy. So isn't this an interesting case study of how we found various errors in classification? I think this was fantastic. But unfortunately for me, uh, my father was also an investigator, said that this can't be so easy. It can't just be that we go in for 2 months, we found out something, and very rarely would any company accept that there is some issue in their in their process so simply and accept it and be willing to. So then, yeah, then I started thinking as well that, yeah, wait, this does not make sense. It's never in my career, we've never had a case that, we pointed out two things and they were like, oh yeah, we're absolutely wrong. And this has to be done. So I started scratching my head that why would someone be willing to accept an error in the system so quickly and so easily? In essence, it turned out that it was a red herring. But now I'm going to show you some more data points which I want your views on to see how we can actually see that maybe the data they were providing us itself was incorrect, right? So this is the data that is provided to us. Now, basis this data, I'm going to give you guys maybe 3 to 4 minutes to just have a look and tell me, are there any red flags that you see? And of course, now we've been together for almost an hour and 45 minutes. You know that whenever I ask you such questions, there is always something in it. So please, do evaluate this data that is available on the screen, and then we can discuss. So I'm going to give you guys maybe 3 or 4 minutes to please go through this. Yeah, so great. Please feel free to put in your thoughts. And you may also ask questions on the chat as well, like in case if you feel there is something that you want more information on, please feel free to let us know. And if you want me to repeat any specific part of the case study, happy to do so. So just to explain, this particular data set is your toll road data. That means showing you how many, the what we call as the booth data. This particular data shows us all the various toll road assets in the country and what the movements are. And the last years, like which countries, most like, in terms of value of toll roads, etc., some details around that. Correct. That's a good point. That's a good point. Rajasthan has most toll and longest toll road run. Interesting point. No toll tickets given to vehicles. Fair point. Fair point. Only cash clear. That's interesting as well. Interesting observation. Anything? I think these are great observations. But Gujarat shows massive volume increase. Okay, interesting. I'll give you guys maybe another couple of minutes, but interesting observations to work on. Now think of it this way. Now I will have to provide a forensic report to my client, the private equity, and they will need something that they can take to a court of law. So keeping that in mind, let's see if we can think of some. Of course, this is not as straightforward an observation, but it's something that we need to consider. All right, would you guys like me to give you the result of this? Because I think we should be up on time shortly. All right, let me guys give you what we found in this case, and trust me, it's super interesting. Now, one of the key elements in this is, of course, the toll road data. Now, let's look at this and look at it very carefully. We have booths 1 to 10. Now, picture a toll road in your mind and just figure out if there's something unique that comes about in that. Variable price per kilometer is good, but I'm going to show you something now. Very interesting. I have highlighted a specific direction. Now think of it as a road. and I've highlighted a specific direction. That means when we're looking at a toll road operating, let's say we have a toll road, we have cars going on one side of the road in one direction and cars coming from the other side in another direction. Now let me put this into a pictographic form. This is what the toll road looks like. Now, in this case, lanes 1 to 5, 6, 8, and 9 are operating correctly. That means the direction is spot on. Now, specifically toll road, lane 7, right, which corresponds to booth 7, a vehicle is actually going in the opposite direction. Now, this is a physical impossibility because no vehicle can skip a lane and go to the other side, and nor will a person traveling in booth 7 collect a reverse ticket to come in. So this actually pointed out a very, very serious concern. The concern being that someone has manipulated the data, because this again is an absolute physical impossibility that a vehicle cannot skip the divider and skip an active lane and move to another lane. Now think about this in your, you know, over the period of time of an experience of moving in any toll road, have you ever seen a situation like this? No. And with this, as one of our key points of evidence, along with many others, we went to the lawyers and we mentioned that, look, the data that they have provided us itself is in question. So forget calculating on revenue. There is a much bigger concern because there seems to be an external undue influence on the data. And that itself was able to win this particular, and eventually just for, I mean, we are given to understand that eventually the private equity was settled for around 120 odd million US dollars. So this is the kind of impact that takes place. And these are just simplistic elements that come out from data that we see on a day-to-day basis. Now here, the very key and unique thing was that the person who was running this actually had a red herring for us. And in the red herring, they actually said that, you know what, yes, we made issues in terms of vehicle lengths and size, and therefore they were willing to settle. So it showed that there was some sort of tangible, you know, uh, realization to the issue that the private equity had, and they wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible. But actually, this was even a more successful route, and they were actually hiding a lot of data to us. So again, I hope this was an interesting process, and I was just trying to get some data on it. So this is something that was interesting, and I thought that I would share with you guys that when we look at data, sometimes it's very interesting to see the data from a very different lens, and that's what really provides us the great results. So, of course, since we don't have too much time, I just want to quickly take you guys through to understand what are the key and important elements or steps in an investigation. One of the most important things is setting the right goals and objectives, right? And when we talk about setting goal or objective, it's, let's say in any of these cases that we've discussed, it's all about finding that are we getting the right evidence for our clients? Are we achieving that objective? So let's say from the will case, right? Our objective should be, we should see whether we're able to ensure that we are able to validate the document in itself. From the toll road case study, okay, are we able to provide them with the right estimate in terms of traffic? So we need to set the goals and objectives very clearly at the beginning of the investigation. Once we set our goal, making a plan to achieve it. Now, when we talk about plan, we're not saying that evaluate 10 Excel files or this or that. No. When we're talking about making a plan for achieving the objective, it is about ensuring that we're able to think from every direction, right? That we're not leaving any stone unturned. The idea is to, when we make a plan, of course, it has to be effective in terms of time, because at the end of the day, we are all professionals and we're part of a professional business setup. So time is of value to us. So we need to ensure that we achieve it through the right commercial means, but at the same time, we have to ensure that we are able to make a plan so that we are able to cover as many elements as possible, be it through a kaleidoscopic approach, be it through the theory of impossibility, or any other way, right? Uh, Collection of evidence. This is important. Now, let's say going back to the Excel case study, I was the one who was controlling the Excel sheet at all points in time. When we do this, we have to ensure that we are able to at least get things in our own hands. So we can, as we say, kick the tires in our own way if possible. Many times in collection of evidence, we use forensic IT experts as well, who will take an image of a computer, hard drive, a phone, iPad, you name it, right? So collection of evidence is very important. Of course, evaluation of evidence will stick to our plan because, when we're thinking about making the plan for the objective, we also start thinking about what are the various pieces of evidence or pieces of data that we require to do to evaluate that, and then evaluation of that particular evidence or data again. The most key element, and which is witnessed by our previous case study on the toll road, is summarizing your findings and discussing them with the team, right? This discussion helps immensely because it gives you a different viewpoint. Now, I have been doing investigations for a long time, but that doesn't mean that my viewpoint is the only viewpoint or is the correct viewpoint. Sometimes doing investigations for so long, maybe I need a fresh perspective on things. And that's where it's important to discuss with your team because any idea can come from anywhere. There is no concept of a junior or a senior team member. Ideation happens at any level. Just to give you an example, um, I think the youth of today is exposed to, I'd say, social media and think from a different perspective, which we can really leverage in our investigations. And honestly, maybe not that I'm very old, but maybe I don't know how to really tap into that. But a young professional will know that, hey, look, Instagram shows you maybe these 10 other metrics which can be used, and maybe that might be something. So discussing with a team really reinforces your findings or helps you get even more findings, right? And we always say that if we're doing an evaluation or review where we are investigating a subject, right, or a target or a specific employee or a company, an opportunity must be given to them to hear what they have to say, because sometimes this helps in your own case and sometimes it helps clarify a doubt as well. But all this must be done in tandem with the legal team suggestion, because they are the way I like to see it, that our service in terms of forensic audit and investigation or is very important for a negotiating table. But for a legal perspective, it is always important to keep like the legal team and the clients always in the loop. So maybe this opportunity to clarify can be a suggestion given to the clients and the legal team to take forward, but this is something that is very critical, right? And eventually, of course, conclusion and reporting. And I have another slide in terms of looking at what should be the good elements, or what should be, according to me, the elements that would be required from a forensic audit report. Again, in terms of what an forensic audit or an accounting report should consider as the objective and mandate, because that's very important to know that what you are allowed to view and what you are looking to view. Scope and approach. I mean, I'm not. It's important to have these things. You can always be part of a disclaimer. It's just to give an idea to the reader of your report or a court of law that these are the steps you've taken. It's important, but I wouldn't put it on the highest priority. An executive summary is very important because it's summary like many times forensic reports require a lot of detail to be entailed, right? And not everyone has the time to read a 60 or a 100-page report. So the executive summary becomes a very important element, and the art of summarizing findings in a way to convey them. That is what is crucial. And in a crude sense, it is exactly how whatever I've shown you guys today in terms of examples are essentially executive summaries or summaries of my cases. If I have to show you that report, it may be a 10-day process of just discussing every element, but the executive summary becomes very crucial. We also like to put an overall assessment or a conclusion, because these, at the end of the day, what is your client interested in, and what is the legal person's, or your legal team's objective as well. Like, hey, what is the eventual result of this? Is there something wrong? Is there not something wrong? Yes, these conclusions are never binary, like or black and white. They can be filled with, but an overall assessment is very important in order to give the direction to your customers or your clients or their advisors. Yeah. Of course, without saying it, your report must contain all your major findings supported by documentary evidence or facts or any sort of details that will substantiate these, right? Sometimes in investigations we go looking for A, but sometimes we find some B and C and D, like something completely different, but which may actually be of tremendous value to the client. Ironically, the what we discussed in terms of entry exit records was an ancillary finding, and these sometimes also add value. And who knows, maybe sometime in future you're called back for another investigation, and these things all bundle up together and form something even more interesting, right? So these are again very crucial and important. And of course, Recommendations are important because they give your client a direction to go forward. And lastly, which I feel again is very critical, is to ensure that we put our constraints and limitations, because not in every investigation will you get all details and everything provided upfront to you. There are many times that you will not get what you need because of sensitivity, because of whatever. These constraints must be put. So this is, I feel, also a very, very important aspect. And lastly, of course, we need to support our entire report with exhibits, details, and annexures. Lastly, a quick thing in terms sorry. Hello? Yeah. Just the last quick thing is, just a few tips and tricks. Always stick to facts, minimize opinions, try to substantiate everything with evidence. Keep language as simple as possible. Never conclude anything without evaluating from every perspective, and don't spend too much time on just like hearsay elements, like what you hear from either conversations or interviews. So this is what we have. At the end of the day, it's all about just making sure that you put in as much effort as possible. And the idea is like never believe anything is like anything is impossible. The idea is everything and anything is possible. So always keep.
Excuse me,
Thank you
someone
very
is
much.
unmuted. Can you please mute your microphone, Miss Bernadette? Thank you.
So this was all from my end, and thank you guys so much. It was really wonderful to take you guys through this journey, and of course I will be here and look forward to discussing some more questions and thoughts that you guys have on the in the panel discussion that we have later. So thank you everyone, and really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarang, for that very engaging and interesting discussion. So, if you want more from Sarang, Sarang will be coming to Manila this January 2026. So, to register, please see the Google form we will be sharing in the GC.